Hello, my fair friends. I'm Ruby Ruse. This is Baby Bunny, and welcome to Fairy Fortunes. In today's video, we are going to be doing a tag video. I'm so excited. I have seen many of these flying about YouTube, and I've always wanted to do one, and here we are finally doing a tag video. This video is called Season of the Witch. I saw this video first by a YouTuber named Crystal R. Martin, so I will have her video linked down below. And then this video also was done by BeanBagHagWag. Crystal R. Martin and BeanBagHagWag are two of my favorite YouTubers that talk about pagan and magical themes, so I do hope you will check out their channels. And according to the two of them, this particular tag was originally created by the Woodland Hag, so I will have her channel linked down below as well. So in tag videos, if you're not familiar with them, you're given a list of questions and then you answer them on your channel. So here we are with the Season of the Witch. So the first question is, in what way do you choose to identify and why? I don't identify as a witch. I really don't. When people press me about my religion, I usually give a pretty generic term. I usually say that I'm pagan because I do use magic, although I was looking over what I had accomplished this year, and I actually did not spend time doing a very specific spell during the 2019. But I do regularly use magic. I think many things are magical. I have many magical experiences in my life. So I do practice magic. I don't call it witchcraft, though. The other thing is if people really want me to specify a path, I think the closest thing that I could use to describe myself is called a fairy woman. I know! Are you shocked? Oh my goodness! Fairy woman! I also like the term sorceress, but a lot of times I'm just really boring and I call myself a pagan or a magical practitioner. I really don't subscribe to a particular kind of path. I'm very fortunate that I have been introduced to chaos magic. I'm very fortunate that I have had teaching in traditional witchcraft and also ceremonial magic. I have been exposed to Wicca and some other concepts. But I don't, and none of those paths really spoke to me as a person. As I said, I call myself a fairy woman, and there is a minor movement called fairycraft. That's a term that I've heard used, and you can find a book about it by, the author's name is Morgan Daimler. I hope I've said that correctly. And she has a book called Fairycraft, and I have read her work and I do like it, but I wouldn't call what I do fairycraft. A fairy woman is either a woman that is of the fae herself or has worked so heavily with the fae that their magical abilities have kind of come to her as well. I suppose you could call yourself a fairy man as well, as if your gender identity is male. So you could definitely call yourself a fairy man if you wanted to as well. So that is what I choose, how I choose to identify. Why do I choose to identify in that way? Well, obviously I'm very working with the fae is very much a part of my practice. And nature spirits too, because I think the natural world is full of magic. I think that magic is a birthright of all living beings. So that is why I call myself a fairy woman rather than a witch, because I don't think that magic is just for the few. I think magic is a birthright of all living beings. I think that even animals possess magic of their own. And I think it's very personal, and no teaching that I have come across, like I said, I have studied ceremonial magic extensively. I've worked with chaos magic. I've worked with traditional witchcraft, and I think all of those are valid paths. I really gained a lot by studying those different pathways. But they didn't really speak to me because none of them I felt addressed that innate knowledge that I feel drawn to, is that magic is a birthright. It is not something that is gifted to the few. It is something that is there for you, that you were born with it, and it is yours to use as you see fit. The other reason I would say that I call myself a fairy woman is I often talk about the fae, and I have said many, many times, and I will say it again because it's important, is that the fae in our language, we do not have a word for good or bad or good or evil. Those just concepts do not exist in our language, because there is always good in the bad, and there is always bad within the good. People always start out, I think, with the best intentions, and that's another thing, is that many pagan traditions and many magical traditions operate under the context of "and in it harm none" is a very common edict of Western magical practices and religions. And that does not resonate with me as a fairy woman, because, as I said, there is no concept of good or evil. Because everything has the potential to cause harm. You walking crushes the grass as you take a step. Now, does that mean that you need to stay still and go nowhere for the rest of your life? No, that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that you inadvertently can cause harm with everything that you do. So the idea is to act with the best intentions that you have in the moment and hope for the best. That's what you do. Because there are always consequences. There are always reactions to everything that you do. So that is why I identify as a fairy woman and not on one of these more specific paths. And although I do appreciate the work that Morgan Daimler is doing with fairycraft, and I would recommend her book if you're interested in that, but I'm sorry, that's not what I practice. So it's closer, I think, than like ceremonial magic or Wicca, but no, it's not there either. So question 2, leaving that alone. What does my daily practice look like is question 2. What does my daily practice look like? Well, as I said, to me, magic is just part of living. Like, I live a magical life because I'm living in this world. So I think that anything could be described as a magical moment, really. But what is my daily practice? Well, I'm kind of an early riser. I oftentimes will get up before dawn. I really enjoy that twilight setting. If you work with the fae, that makes so much sense. So I enjoy rising early in the morning, and I really like to sit with that quiet. I love to listen to the world waking up. I really enjoy, like, for instance, I know that the birds usually start singing at 4 o'clock. Almost without fail here in Illinois. So, so I know that because of the hours that I tend to keep. So for me, that's a magical process of listening to the earth actually rising for the day. So I often, that's a part of my magical routine, is just sitting with that silence. Sometimes I do a lot of writing in the morning. So I did a video where I talked about doing National Novel Writing Month. A great deal of when I did most of my writing was in those early morning hours before the sun had actually risen. But now that I'm not working on a novel, a lot of times I will journal. I will write about the dreams that I had the night before. And I do a lot of writing about things that have happened to me over the course of the week, things I'm not thinking about or trying to process. So journaling and that quiet space is really, I consider, it doesn't sound like a very magical process, but for me it's a very magical thing. Like that is part of my magical routine. As far as magical routines go, I suppose in the evening I very much do enjoy meditating. To be honest, I really don't ever meditate more than 15 minutes at a time, although I do consider my morning writing and that just being quiet in the morning, to me that's also kind of meditating. But usually in the evening is when I'm doing more serious modes of meditation. So if you're interested in learning more about the meditative processes that I use, because I use several, please let me know in the comments below and I can make a video for you on specifically meditation. I have altars, and usually my more official meditative time in the evening. Usually I do that after dinner, after I've eaten my dinner, and before I go to bed. I will usually do that in front of my main altar. You know, other things that I really think are part of my magical process that many people don't consider magical is that I think exercise is a part of my magical process. Like that, to me, taking care of myself and being healthy, that is for me a magical act. Cooking is a very magical act for me. In fact, people call themselves kitchen witches because there is a lot of magic in preparing food and grinding herbs and using spices to create something. When you're cooking, you're creating. So the next question is, what do I do for self-care? It's interesting. I made a whole video on this, and I will have that link down below. But my self-care incorporates a lot of the things that I've just talked about. Meditation is a big thing for me, and self-care. Exercise is a huge part of my self-care. I love exercising. I love it so much. And I'm not just like a lot of people want to love exercising and they don't. And believe me, if you're one of those people, that's perfectly acceptable. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with you. But I just can't get enough of it. I love it so much. I just love exercising. So that's a huge part of my self-care. Cooking is a part of my self-care. So it's very interesting that many of these things that I talked about being a part of my daily magical practice are also a part of my self-care practice. I really prefer to cook my own food. I just like to have that control over what is going into my body. And like I said, combining those ingredients and fueling yourself, and it's just, that's really a very huge part of my self-care process. I don't like baths. I don't like it. It gets the wings wet. I don't like it. No baths. Gross. So some other things that I do for self-care is I really love fashion. I made a video about that, so I do hope you will check that one out too. And I love makeup. I just love it so much. And I really use, you know, getting dressed in the morning and applying makeup to my face and my markings. I use that as part of my self-care. I look at it as painting on my, and using myself as a canvas. So that is something that I do for self-care. The next question is, what do I do to take care of nature, wildlife, the environment, or animals? If you have been watching my channel, you will know that I do have 4 animal companions. Bing was featured in a video. Crowley has made several appearances, and she has been on my Facebook page, so you can see her video there on Facebook. Also, Castiel is the newest member of the family, and then the one animal companion that no one has ever met is my kitty cat Lion, who looks nothing like a lion. But he is named Lion because it's lion as in the cowardly. That's his name, and that's why he's never been featured on an episode of Fairy Fortunes. So the reason I bring them up is that specifically Crowley and Castiel came to me in pretty great need. So Crowley, I was asked by some people, she was trapped underneath a car and they asked me to help get her out. And so I was able to rescue Crowley Cat from underneath this human car. She was terrified and injured, so I was able to help her. Castiel came to me in a similar circumstance, although he was not involved in a traffic crash, but it was kind of a similar circumstance. He was brought to me because they didn't know what to do with this. He was a teeny tiny little baby. He really should not have been separated from his mother at the time that he was brought to me, but circumstances being what they were, here he was, somebody had to help him, and that person was me. So I have had personal experiences helping animals in need. Bing and Lion came to me through the Animal Welfare League, which I have contributed monetary donations to in the past. I love to crochet. There is an organization that is for domestic violence that works with providing care and shelter for animals who have been involved in a domestic violence situation. So I like to use my crocheting skills to create blankets for the animals in that particular shelter. The name of that organization is called Safe Haven. So you can look them up, and I hope you will consider donating to that worthy cause as well, because yes, animals too are affected by domestic violence. Another thing that I do is I was very, very concerned about plastic bags. The reason being is that I learned that these are a significant danger to particularly marine animals. Because the plastic bags, when they are floating in the ocean, look a great deal like jellyfish, which is one of the main food sources of many, many marine live animals, one of them being sea turtles. So I was very determined to completely limit or cut out of my life any use of human plastic bags. So I was very committed to using recycled bags to make any kinds of purchases that I make in the human world, groceries, that thing, kind of thing. The other thing is that a lot of people have converted to reusable grocery bags, and that's awesome, and I commend you, and I think it's great. There are many places in the United States that have actually banned the use of plastic bags, and so you do have to use cloth and reusable grocery bags. But what's interesting is that they have still continued to use the plastic vegetable bags, which to me makes no sense, because it's these plastic vegetable bags that are even worse, I think, than the old grocery bags that we were seeing, because these have very little printing on them and they look even more like jellyfish. So I just was like, no, not only am I committed to not using plastic grocery bags for any kind of shopping, I was not going to use plastic grocery bags for vegetables. So I actually have cloth mesh bags that I use to purchase food. I'm sorry, I don't grow my own food. I do use human grocery stores. I try to be very careful about the items that I bring into my life. So I did mention that I really enjoy fashion. I really enjoy makeup. When I make a purchase, I try to I don't do fast fashion. I'm not just out to get a deal. I am specifically buying something because it resonates with me, it speaks to me, and when I wear it, it makes me deliriously happy. So that is another way I contribute to the environment, is that I don't want to discard things because they have lost meaning to me. I try to bring things into my life that are going to be with me for a significant amount of time, because it's not about purchasing in the moment. It's about purchasing for purpose. It's about purchasing because that item is important, meaning that it has a purpose, and not only does it have a purpose, it brings me happiness. Not just happiness, it brings me delirious happiness. So for example, if I'm out to buy a pair of pants, I usually wait to buy things like that until I absolutely have no choice, because that's just kind of the way I am. But if the pants are not perfect, if they do not make me deliriously happy, it doesn't matter how much I need them, I don't buy them. So that is one way that I work with the environment, is I try to limit those things that come into my life so that I have less things that will potentially become trash in the future. The next question is, how do I help, heal, or support humans or humanity? I truly believe that fairy fortunes is a way to help humanity. And the reason I say this is not from a position of arrogance. It is from a position of experience. It is such a gift to be able to go to festivals and to tell fortunes for people, because it is a moment of connection, if nothing else. People come in and to see me, and we do a reading, and I am present in that moment specifically for that person that comes in to have a reading. And sometimes that's enough, you know? It doesn't have to be this amazing magical experience. Sometimes just giving another human being focus and attention is worth a lot. It's worth a lot. It is something that is so underrated, and it is so important. And that in and of itself can be a healing moment, just to be present for another person, to not have an agenda, just to be in the moment with them and share an experience with them. That is incredibly healing. It is an incredible gift to be able to share with someone. So that is one way that I feel that I heal and support humanity. Another way that I feel that I heal and support humanity is I feel that I'm an ambassador for the Fae. You know, I really honestly believe that I am here to tell you that these stories are true, that there is meaning to be found here, and that the Fae are present, and a part of this living world, and we are not separate, we are the same. And it is a message of conservation, it is a message of living together and being a magical being. So I really feel that that is another way that I support humanity, is being this ambassador for the Fae. And finally, I see myself as a protector. And I'm going to leave it at that. Next question. What is my understanding of a higher power? Oh, that's pretty deep, isn't it? What is my understanding of a higher power? Well, you know what? The higher power, I believe that's different for everybody. Right, Bunny? I believe everybody has a different perspective of what a higher power is. And that seems like such a cop-out. Let me explain. When you meet another person, when you have contact with a family member, for example, your own sibling, your perception of that person is completely different from another person's perception. So your relationship to your sibling is much, much different than your sibling's relationship to their own significant other. In fact, your sibling's spouse and you might describe the same person in two completely different ways. Does that mean that one person is wrong and the other person is right? Probably not. It's their unique perception of that person. So both realities are realities. So that is my understanding of a higher power as well, is that every person's perspective of the higher power is true for them. So I do a lot of work with Odin, although I don't consider Odin a patron god for me. He might argue that, but I do a lot of work with Odin. He shows up from time to time, as does Thor. I'm going to leave that alone. Anyway, I do a lot of work with them, and I've had conversations about Odin with other people, and other people, what's interesting about that is I have a lot of validation from other people and their perceptions of Odin and these beings that I work with. And then there's some difference as well. But like I said, going back to that example of your sibling, your perception of your sibling and your sibling's spouse's perception of your sibling are going to probably be completely different. So I think that defines the higher power for me. Obviously I've talked about Odin. I mentioned that Odin is not, I don't consider Odin or Thor my patron gods. They're probably going to argue that. But moving on, I work primarily with the goddess Diana and the goddess Persephone from the Greek and Roman traditions. And I see those goddesses as very unique individual beings. I do not see them as manifestations of a one general goddess. I don't subscribe to that thought. The reason being is that I was working with Diana for a very long time. I did not name her. I liked the story of Diana, but I thought that that's what it was to me. Oh, I just like that story. She's a protector, and she's a protector of wild things and the forest and the hunt, and I resonate with this story. But I didn't think that this higher power that I was working with was Diana. And then I met Persephone. And it became very clear to me in my personal experience that these were two very unique beings. So I work with Persephone in her aspect as a goddess of the dead. Odin also has a death aspect to him. I don't think that they're the same either. Just because that they govern a similar aspect, a similar condition of humanity, I don't see them as being the same being. I see them as completely unique individuals. So for me, higher power is unique, it's individual, and there's a lot of personal perception that goes in with that. Next question. What is the most important lesson I have learned in my life so far? Oh, life lessons that are so important are often the most difficult to learn, aren't they? I believe it's because empathy and compassion, they are not emotions. They are skills that we learn. And we learn empathy and emotion from important life lessons that are often very painful to learn. So the most important lesson, life lesson that I have learned personally is that I can't save anyone. That sounds so depressing. It's not meant to be depressing. And I'll tell the story of how I came to learn that. My niece was marrying, well, she did marry. She married a man that neither I or my family approved of. And to be honest, he is a person that is not going towards something. He is a person that wants to bring other people down. And I don't like that. He does not inspire me. And I don't understand what it is about him that inspires my niece. And sometimes I think that she chose him not because he was inspiring and good for her, but she chose him because he was familiar. And the sad truth is that we often stay in relationships that are unhealthy because we're afraid that there is nothing beyond them. And I believed that this might be why my niece was staying with him and had chosen to marry him. So I took it upon myself to tell her that she was making a mistake. Because I was going to save her. I didn't save her. And I can't save her because she has to learn compassion the way she's going to learn it. And it's not how I learn compassion. And definitely what I did to her was not coming from compassion from me. Now, I have learned a lot of compassion from that experience. I have. But I was not coming from a place of compassion when I told her that she shouldn't marry him. I was trying to save her. And when you are trying to save another person, you are placing yourself above that other person. I know more than you. Now, the reality is I'm significantly older than my niece. But age isn't something that regulates compassion. And I have met people younger than myself who have known more than I do, that have had things to teach me. So it is very dangerous to say to yourself, I'm going to save this person, because you're putting yourself above that person. And the reality is that no person is above any other living being. And I have significantly damaged my relationship to my niece because I was hellbound and determined to save her, because I placed myself above her. And it wasn't my place. So the greatest lesson that I have learned so far in my life is you can't save anyone else. The only person that you can save is yourself. Next question. And how does the learned lesson affect my values and attitudes? Well, I did talk about that in the last question, but that experience was one of the reasons that I determined that compassion and empathy are not emotions. Like, we think that people are born with compassion, we think that people are born with empathy. They're not. This is a skill that we must learn. And it was definitely that experience that taught me that I had a lot of practice yet to go with compassion and empathy. The other thing about that situation with my niece is that when we were both younger, we had a very close relationship because we actually lived in the same town. We lived in the same place. And so we saw each other almost every day, and we had this really deep relationship. We were actually more like sisters than we were niece and aunt. And then I chose to move away. And here's the thing, is that I did not maintain that closeness. I did not contact her every day, which is so easy. It is so easy to do. We have all of these modes of communication, and yet I never one time used a magic box. I never once wrote her a letter. None of that. I did not do that. And I just assumed that because we shared a bloodline, that was enough. That was enough to maintain that relationship. And the truth that I learned from that, how that affected my values, is no, it's not. Relationships are work, whether or not you are related to the person or not. You have to invest. You have to put in effort to that relationship. It's not a given. You're not entitled to it. You have to earn it, and you are never done earning it. You are never entitled to anything. That is how that affected my attitudes and values. Next question. What is my most spooky experience? So once upon a time, long ago, I have always worked with animal spirits. I've always worked with nature spirits. I've always worked with the fae in some way or another. But actually, this is kind of embarrassing to admit. I didn't believe in ghosts. I did not believe in ghosts, which is so odd because the fae stories and ghost stories are so intertwined. And I was like, no, it's all fae. There's no ghosts. Once a human dies, that's it. They're gone. Done. There's no ghosts. So I was living in a domicile Actually, and I was here in Chicago at the time, although this was many, many years ago. And I was asleep. And I had a companion at the time, so it wasn't just me alone. I was there with a human. I was there with another human. I was there with a human. Okay? So there was a human. And we were asleep. Anyway, moving on from that, this is not a channel for children. Anyway, so we were asleep, and I was in bed, and my brain sometimes talks to me, and it kind of separates itself out, and it says, and so my brain was trying to wake me up, and my brain kept bothering me, and it was like, Ruby, I really need you to wake up right now. Ruby, please, please wake up. I need you to wake up now because you are in danger. You need to wake up right now. And so eventually, with enough prodding from my brain and my subconscious, I did wake up. And when I opened my eyes, there was a man standing right in front of me. And I saw, and it was dark in the room, but I saw he was wearing a pair of black jeans. He had a great big belt buckle, one of those real big ones on his waist, and he was wearing a fitted black t-shirt. And all I could see was his waist. I didn't look up to see his face. But all I could see was this man standing over me as I was sleeping, and my companion I knew was sleeping right next to me. So it was not my companion, this was an intruder in my house. Well, I screamed like a banshee. I screamed bloody murder. I screamed bloody murder, and I woke up my companion. And my human companion was a student of martial arts, and had been one for quite some time. So my companion reached over me, and his leg shot out, and he kicked the man in the face, or at least that was what he had intended to do, is he was going to kick the man in the face. And the man was simply not there anymore. He didn't run out of the room. He didn't run into the bathroom. Nope, he just simply wasn't there anymore. He just simply was not there. And I said, "It was a man! It was a man!" And my companion at the time, he's like, "Yes, it was a ghost." And it was a ghost. And actually, in that same place that we were living, there was another ghost, and it was a woman with a real long red hair like I have, and she had a similar body type to myself, and so my companion saw her as well. And but the man that was standing over me, I really had this sense of malevolence towards him. I really felt that he had intended to hurt me, and that he was leering over me as I was sleeping. So what I think happened in that place, I don't live there anymore. What I think happened is I think that unfortunately that woman had been killed by that man. It was probably a domestic violence situation, and he probably killed her and then killed himself. And their energy was probably woken up, if you will, because I looked similar to her. I had the long red hair, I had the similar body type. She also was probably of Scandinavian descent because she had very high cheekbones like I did. So I suspect that having us in that apartment, my companion and myself, that it like drew up that energy. Like when you're walking through dirt, and the dirt is loose, it lifts a cloud that goes around your feet. I think that's kind of what happened when we were in there, is that we just stirred the dust, and that is my most spooky experience. The next question is, have I ever cursed anyone before? Yes. The answer is yes. Remember that I talked about that earlier in the first question. I was saying that I really haven't identified with any particular path because that idea of infinite harm none really doesn't speak to me, because I have learned that that is just not true, is that anything can cause harm. And actually, I think curses are pretty much the easiest form of magic to do. The easiest. And so simple. You don't have to have a shred of magical training to make a curse. You know why? Because I hate you is a curse. Because you're stupid is a curse. You're fat is a curse. Hey, geek is a curse. That's a curse. And everybody makes curses. You know why? Who's the one person that says you're fat, you're ugly, you're stupid? Who says that to you? Who says that to you? You do. And that is the most potent curse of all, is the ones that we say to ourselves. Words have power, so be careful how you use them. And also, thoughts, emotions, those have power too. So every time you look in the mirror, try not to curse yourself, please. Don't do that. It's hard. It is hard. Curses are very, very easy magical spells to cast. I made another video about curses, so please look through my channel and see. If I remember, I will try to have it linked down below. I do think that curses are much like colds. You can get over them. There are steps that you can take to get rid of them. So, but they're easy to cast. They're easy. But beyond telling somebody that I hated them, yes, I have designed a specific curse and I have cursed someone very, very hard. Now, I have in my video where I talk about curses, I talk about that a curse, I hate you, is a very powerful curse, and that can have extremely long-lasting effects, don't get me wrong. That in and of itself is a powerful curse. But did I sit down and with a magic wand and all? Yes, I did. I cursed somebody with very explicit intention. Now, curses, I do think, need to have a fuel source. So curses won't work if the person doesn't have a fuel source to fuel it. So you have to be careful about how you build that into a spell. So if you want to curse somebody, you got to come up with a fuel source in addition to your curse. So I did. I came up with a fuel source. And I cursed somebody. Is that bad? I don't believe in good or bad. Remember that? There is no word for good or evil in my language. Here's the thing. Why did I curse somebody? Why did I sit down with magical tools and do it? Because it's not about the other person. It was about me and my suffering. And part of a curse is dealing with your pain. So curses are worth doing if they're dealing with your pain and gives you a mode of control and gives you your power back. So everybody thinks that curses are these terrible things because, oh my God, and it harm none. I really don't mean to make fun of people that subscribe to that. I think it's a nice idea. But it's impossible. It is an impossible idea. Because as I mentioned, just you walking crushes the grass beneath your feet. And trust me, that is serious. Does that mean that you shouldn't walk anywhere? That you need to stay in one place for the rest of your life? No. But I am telling you that you are crushing things when you take steps. You are causing harm just by breathing. So, make sure that you maintain as much compassion as you can. Make sure that when you fire off a curse, that it's coming from a place of you wanting to restore the balance of your power. And that is something worth doing. And finally, the last question, if I could live anywhere, where would it be? That's so much lighter after that last question. If I could live anywhere, where would it be? New Mexico! That's where I want to live. Why? I grew up in Arizona, and I fell in love with the Sonoran Desert. However, Arizona has a lot of memories that I think need to remain in the past. And also, politically speaking, it's a little bit more conservative than I am. And the Sonoran Desert only exists in 2 states, and that is Arizona and New Mexico. So one day, maybe I'll live in New Mexico. Where would you like to live? That's what I want to know. Share that with me in the comments. And also, if you would like to do a tag video, if you would like to do this video yourself, please send me an alert on it, because I would love to see your answers to these questions. I want to thank BeanBagHagWag and Crystal R. Martin and the Woodland Hag for coming up with this great tag video. I really enjoyed making it, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. So until next time, have a fairyful day.